Hi, I'm Francisco Ramos and I'm going to do a serial of videos about HDR production for the SGO Vision platform. HDR imagery is the photographic technique that acquires and reproduces a larger range of luminosity than standard dynamic range. Note how I said luminosity and not brightness, as it's normally thought that HDR will give us brighter pictures when actually it's going to give us a larger contrast ratio. On your normal SDR picture, the number of steps that go from your darkest point to your brightest point are a lot smaller than the number of steps that go from the darkest point to the brightest point on an HDR picture.
In this SDR v HDR comparison, you can see how the SDR camera registers a lot less information in the shadows, while it's even more obvious in the highlights, where the HDR camera can really cope with the light coming from the sun, but the SDR camera peaks quite soon. These steps in photographic terms are known as stops. You often hear directors of photography talking about how many stops can a camera handle. The more stops a camera can handle, the more dynamic range it will have.
Up until now, we had SDR cameras, and that didn't really stop us from trying to create HDR imagery. The way we did this was by a technique called bracketing.
So the bracketing technique consists of taking at least 3 exposures of the same scene. One picture with the correct exposure for the midtones, a second picture that is underexposed to correctly get the highlights, and a third picture that is overexposed to correctly get the shadows.
Then these 3 pictures will be merged into a single picture by what is called local tone mapping. So we would get the right exposure of the shadows, right exposure of the midtones, and right exposure of the highlights all merged together into a single picture.
When you combine this technique with a very good photographic eye, you can get astonishing results like this picture. I want to thank my friend and photographer Ignacio Izquierdo, who kindly lent me these photographs for this video. Please check out his website and enjoy all the pictures he's taken all around the world.
Now you could also achieve HDR images by getting a single exposure. This is thanks to the new CMOS sensors that achieve a much higher dynamic range from a single exposure. And we have professional photographic cameras, professional video cameras that can do this. You could have this technology already on commercial photographic cameras. You could even find them in mobile phones that could achieve HDR imagery. But still, display technology is slightly behind. As we speak, the first generation of HDR TVs are going to hit the market. We will finally take full advantage of all the HDR capable sensors that we have in our professional photographic cameras and professional video cameras. And all the genres and all the content will benefit from this, from entertainment, drama, fiction, to natural history documentaries and live events, especially live events.
A sunny day broadcast always presents a tricky situation for broadcasters, as with the current technology it's very difficult to expose correctly for the bright side and the shade side at the same time. Broadcasters have to constantly correct the exposure following where the action is happening.
That won't happen with HDR technology, as the sensors are going to be able to get the right exposure for the 2 sides of the stadium in one go. And we will have the right technology at home where we could see a football game without those jumps between the shadow side and the sunny side.
In this graph, you can see the current standards for SDR and HDR production and the state of play of display technology and its peak brightness value in nits. The SDR standard specifies that the reference monitor for SDR production must peak at 100 nits, but currently there are consumer TVs that can peak up to 400 nits. The Sony BVM X300 peaks at 1000 nits, and you can use this device to master your HDR10 productions. Dolby has a 2000 nit screen called the Dolby Maui. It also has a 4000 nit screen called the Dolby Pulsar. The HLG HDR standard has a peak brightness of 5000 nits, and finally Dolby's PQ standard that peaks at 10,000 nits.
Hope you enjoyed this first episode about HDR production for the SGO Vision platform, and hope I'll see you in the next one. Thank you very much.